everyone, my name is Dr. Joe Gilman. In this video, we're going to be talking about basic functional substitutions, or which is sometimes called reharmonization. All of the materials we'll discuss in this video come from a course I just launched with Jazz Lesson Videos, where we explore all of the essentials of jazz theory. If you'd like to dive deeper into these concepts, you can check out the full course found in the description below. So what actually is substitutions and reharmonization? When you look at a tune, you're going to have a basic set of chords that are given to you, and substitutions and reharmonizations are taking some of those chords and changing them to match whatever kind of emotional feeling you might want. We can make the tune more complex, we can make it more lovely, we can add more color, we can add more taste, anything like that. And that's the idea of substitutions and reharmonization. We can do this by substituting chords, changing chords out, or we can actually insert additional chords in between the chords that are already there. So what kinds of techniques do we have for substitutions and reharmonization? In this video, we're going to be talking about basic functional substitutions that actually make sense in our general Western music harmonic system. Specifically, we're going to be talking about tritone substitutions, modal borrowing, which we'll also be terming as backdoor harmony, secondary dominance, and sidestepped harmony. So let's start with the 2-5-1 we're going to be dealing with. As you know, a 2-5-1 is the second chord, the fifth chord, and the tonic or first chord in a key. In the key of C, a 2-5-1 would be the chords of D minor, G dominant 7, and C major 7. We might voice it a little bit more practically to sound something like this. That's our basic 2-5-1, which you'll see in a myriad of standards in classic jazz tunes. Sometimes it takes as much as 65 to 85% of any of these repertoire of tunes. So what's something that we can do to kind of color these chords a little bit more? So our first concept is called tritone substitution. So what is tritone substitution? Well, as you know, the tritone is the distance of an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth, something like this. That's a tritone from C or from F. When we look at our 2-5-1, there's one of these chords that has a tritone in it, and it's the dominant chord. Here's our G7 chord. Notice that there's an important interval of a tritone right here, between the third and the seventh. The tritone is important, or the third and the seventh are important because they tell you whether the chord has a minor quality or a major quality, and the seventh is important because it tells you whether the chord is an active chord or a passive chord. The third and the seventh of a G7 are B and F. This is important because these two tones will either want to stretch in or converge inward to resolve to the tonic, or they might want to resolve outward to resolve to a different tonic. In the case of the G7, they're resolving inward. But notice that that same note, the B and the F, are also the tritone, or the third and the seventh, of a different dominant chord that happens to be a tritone away. The B and the F become a C flat and an F, the third and the seventh of a D flat chord. So basic tritone substitution would be when you have a dominant seventh chord, you can substitute it for a dominant seventh chord that's a tritone away. So this is called tritone substitution for two main reasons. One, the basic structural interval we're talking about is a tritone. But also, we're substituting this chord with a dominant chord that's a tritone away. So our tritone substitution version of our 2-5-1 would go D minor to D flat 7 to C major. So our typical progression and our tritone subbed 2-5. All right, let's try a different technique. So there's something called modal borrowing. What is modal borrowing? Well, if we're in a major key, modal borrowing would be the idea where we borrow some chords from the parallel minor. C major, as I just played, sounds like that. The parallel minor is C minor. As you know, minor has different forms. We have natural minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. So we could see what it sounds like to borrow some of those chords from the parallel minor into the major. Most of the time, modal borrowing uses the tone that is actually the lowered sixth scale degree. So in C minor, it would be an A flat. That's an important borrowed tone to get the flavor of modal borrowing. You would think it would be the lowered third, and that is an important tone to borrow from, but the lowered sixth scale degree seems to be a little bit more idiomatic, and I'll show you some examples of that. So if we're looking at the key of C minor, the most important chords that seem to be used when we use modal borrowing are the 2 chord, D half diminished in the key of C minor, F minor, or the 4 chord, the flat major 6th chord, A flat major 7, and the fully diminished 7th chord built on the leading tone, B fully diminished. Those are all chords from C minor. They're not from C major. We're borrowing them from C minor. Another chord that's often borrowed is the subtonic. That's the B flat dominant 7. That chord exists in C natural minor, and we might see it showing up in some modal borrowing. So what does this all mean? So for example, if I had that 2-5-1, I might decide to borrow the 2 chord and alter the 5 chord to give my 2-5-1 a little bit different flavor. So that might sound something like D half diminished to G alt to C major.